The high temperatures are a major factor during summer operations at CAE Oxford Aviation Academy Phoenix. You must be aware of temperature's effect on aircraft and human performance. Every pilot is required to know their aircraft performance and ensure their safety is not jeopardized by density altitude. This has already been covered during ground school. If you are unfamiliar, please see your instructor. This briefing will go over the threat of heat on human performance. Let's start by going over some important terms. Acclimatization. This is the beneficial physiological adaptations that occur from gradually increasing exposure time in a hot environment. Personnel may need 2 weeks of increasing exposures to become substantially acclimated. Acclimatization has been shown to increase sweating efficiency, stabilize circulation, and increase the ability to perform work with a lower core temperature. Heat stress is the combination of environmental and physical work factors that constitute the total heat load imposed on the body. The environmental heat stress factors are air temperature, radiant heat exchange, for example sunlight, air movement, and relative humidity. Physical work contributes to total heat stress through the body's production of heat, that is metabolic heat, as it burns energy to sustain work. Heat stress disorders are any type of adverse health problem related to heat. Heat syncope, cramps, exhaustion, and stroke are all forms of heat stress disorders. These disorders may include the following symptoms: nausea, vomiting, dizziness, headaches, faintness, abnormal sweating, convulsions, lack of coordination, mental confusion, and abdominal or leg cramps. The personnel most likely to be affected by the heat are those who have just arrived from cooler regions of the country, are older, or are in poor health condition. Heat stress disorders include heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Heat cramps are painful, intermittent spasms in the muscles, arms, legs, or abdominal. Cramps may result from exposure to high temperatures for a relatively long time, particularly if accompanied by hard physical work. Cramps may occur during or after exposure. Cramps usually occur after heavy sweating and are the result of excessive loss of salt from the body. Even if moisture is replaced by drinking water, the loss of salt by sweating may provoke heat cramps. Heat exhaustion. The signs of heat exhaustion are profuse sweating, weakness, rapid pulse, dizziness, nausea, and headache. Heat exhaustion is caused by a deficiency of water and/or salt intake and circulatory strain from competing demands for blood flow to the skin and to active muscles. The body is struggling to regulate its internal temperature. This can progress to heat stroke rapidly if not treated. Heat stroke is a medical emergency and is caused by exposure to a hot environment in which the body is unable to cool itself. This results in the body temperature rising rapidly. With classic heat stroke, hot, dry skin may present as the body can no longer produce sweat. It is often preceded by nausea or vomiting, abnormal shivering, and/or confused mental status with slurred speech. The increased body temperature may lead to delirium, convulsions, coma, and even death. Heat stroke is a much more serious condition than either heat cramps or heat exhaustion. See the diagram to the right to compare heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Other heat stress disorders include heat syncope and hyponatremia. Heat syncope is fainting that occurs immediately after exertion without proper cool down. It is caused by blood vessels dilating in an effort to quickly cool the body down, to an extent that blood flow to the brain is reduced. Hyponatremia, or acute water intoxication, is a condition in which the level of sodium in the blood is lowered as a result of sodium loss in sweat. This combined with large volumes, greater than 1.5 quarts per hour, of plain water consumed. This is a medical emergency. Hyponatremia is a life-threatening condition that may result in confusion, fatigue, muscle cramps, and nausea early on, followed later by vomiting, unconsciousness, seizures, and death if not recognized and treated promptly. This condition is difficult to distinguish from heat exhaustion and heat stroke. If suspected, it should be treated immediately in a medical facility. The signs and symptoms of heat stress and heat exhaustion. Early signs and symptoms include dizziness, headache, dry mouth, unsteady walk, weakness, and muscle cramps. Actions should be to remove this person from training, allow them to rest in the shade, take sips of water, and if signs or symptoms do not improve in 15 to 30 minutes, transport to a medical facility. If these signs or symptoms worsen, call an ambulance. Later signs and symptoms can include a hot body or high temperature, confusion, unresponsiveness, coma, and vomiting, involuntary bowel movement, convulsions, and weak or rapid pulse. The immediate actions should be to call an ambulance for immediate transport to a hospital. Lay this person down in the shade with the feet elevated until the ambulance arrives. Give sips of water while waiting for ambulance. Begin active cooling if skin is hot to the touch. Undress as much as possible and pour cool water over person and fan. You should know these symptoms and watch for them in yourself and in others. Here we have a heat index that shows how the combination of temperature and humidity can affect how the body experiences heat. This chart shows both air temperature and the dew point in Celsius. You can notice the danger range changes depending on the source of the chart. For example, 45 degrees Celsius air temperature changes greatly in danger depending on the dew point. Heat can have an impressive effect on a person's ability to make decisions. For every 2% loss of fluids, there's an average 11% loss in reaction time. As you can see from this chart, the number of errors goes up as the temperature rises. Even more dramatically so when the temperature is 95 degrees Fahrenheit or above. The best way to prevent heat illness is to be prepared by staying hydrated and protecting yourself from the sun. Carry lots of cool water, drinking 1 quart per hour at a minimum. Drinking more than 1.5 quarts per hour can result in hyponatremia. Do not drink caffeine, alcohol, or sugar-containing beverages. Your body must use water to metabolize these substances, meaning that they can dehydrate you faster. Wear sunscreen and a hat. Being sunburned causes skin damage, which can interfere with your body's ability to sweat efficiently. Remember that the higher the SPF, the more protection you'll have. Wearing a cotton t-shirt under your uniform shirt can aid in keeping you cool by acting as a wet evaporative cooler. Remember to properly secure water bottles during flight. These water bottles can be placed in pockets where you can reach them in flight without putting aircraft control in jeopardy, or placed in flight bags which are properly secured to the seat as to not interfere with flight controls. Do not put water bottles in your lap. Place water bottles on the floor or under your seat. Put flight bags on the seat next to you if they will interfere with flight controls. Place flight bags on seats without securing them with seat belts, or store water bottles in places where they may be crushed, causing them to rupture or leak. See in these photos examples of water bottles that are secured from roaming the cockpit through the use of pockets or properly secured storage container. At the top left, we can see water bottles in side pockets. Underneath that, they've placed the water bottles in seat back pockets. Over to the right, we have coolers and backpacks that are secured to the seat with a seat belt and will not interfere with flight controls. Improper securing of water bottles can be dangerous, as water bottles can roll under rudders or brakes, impairing their function. Ruptured water bottles may leak onto electrical components, causing failure. A free-rolling water bottle may create noise, which can lead the flight crew to become distracted. For example, was that bang from the water rolling around, or did I just hit a bird? And when you need water, you don't want to go looking under your seat for it when you're soloing. Please remember to not eat snacks while in the cockpit. Food in the cockpit can attract insects or critters, and it can lead to sanitary issues such as mold or bacteria growth. Crumbs and trash can find their way into trim cables and seat locks, causing serious flight safety concerns. Do eat during breaks at airports to replenish mineral content lost due to sweat. Other things that may not be as easily controllable are to stay out of direct sunlight, avoid flying midday, and beware of winds and fans. These can dehydrate you faster by evaporating the sweat. You may feel cooler until you run out of water. Dehydration symptoms can include increased thirst, dry mouth and swollen tongue, weakness, dizziness, palpitations, which is a feeling that the heart is jumping or pounding, confusion, sluggishness, fainting, inability to sweat, decreased urine output, and the urine color may indicate dehydration. If urine is concentrated and deeply yellow or amber, you may be dehydrated. Use the urine color chart on the right of this slide to determine how hydrated you are. This chart is posted in most of the restrooms in our CAE facility for your convenience. In order to mitigate heat stress on our operations, a heat mitigation policy is in effect for June, July, and August. To view this policy, check out the Ops Manual and Opio book. A case study. During a dual flight, the instructor notices the student begins taking much longer than normal to answer questions. The student is sweating heavily, and eventually the instructor takes control of the aircraft, telling the student to relax and take a drink. The student does not respond, but just sits slumped in the cockpit unresponsive. The student eventually looks unconscious. What would you do? How could this be prevented? The immediate action would be to declare an emergency and land at the nearest suitable airport, with medical personnel standing by to treat heat exhaustion. Do your best to keep the student out of the sun with air vents on their face. And remember to protect the flight controls. Don't let the unconscious student get in the way. This could be prevented by ensuring they have the necessary water on board prior to departure, and giving the student breaks every 15 minutes for water and monitor their water intake. Show the students how to use the available vents, train at altitudes where cool air exists if possible, and schedule low-altitude pattern work in the early morning or late evening. Case study number 2. You are a student solo on a cross-country to Marana and are on the way back to Falcon. After reaching a cruising altitude of 6,500 feet, you are 20 nautical miles southeast of Coolidge Airport when your oil temperature suddenly reaches redline. A check of oil pressure indicates in the green, but near the low end and getting lower. You decide to head to P08 to make an emergency landing. After landing, you try to call CAE dispatch from your cell phone, but the battery appears to be dead. You are nearly out of water, and all you can find on the airport is a porta potty. No buildings are open, and you can't find anybody. It is 1600 local time, and the temperature is 41 degrees Celsius. What would you do? How would you prevent this? The immediate action in this case would be to call any aircraft in range of your aircraft using your onboard radio equipment. Tell them to relay a message to dispatch that you are at P08 due to redline oil temperature and need assistance due to being low on water with no cell phone. Activate ELT if unable to reach anyone. Once you've notified somebody, get out of the sun and find shade. Rest and relax while help is coordinated. Leave a note at the aircraft if you are planning to leave the aircraft's vicinity. Help will be looking for you nearby. You can prevent this by monitoring your engine temperatures and pressure during climb and increase IAS if temps become a concern. Take extra water, frozen water bottles work really well for this, and ensure your cell phone is fully charged and activate a flight plan. Know where help may be found at each airport. Check out the traffic pattern operations briefing. Remember to install sunshades after your flight. These help keep direct sunlight off the seat and yokes to prevent burns and excessive cockpit temperatures. This also results in longer life of avionics equipment.
I don't normally fly in the hot summer months, but when I do, I prefer to drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated, my friends.